everyone, this is Amanda from Simple Life of a Frugal Wife, and today we're talking about how you can live on one income. Now, if you haven't subscribed, I'd love for you to subscribe by hitting the button below so you don't miss a video, and let's get into it. So, my daughter, my oldest, is approaching 12, and since she's been born, we have been a one-income family. I have been at home, aside from doing some very casual jobs over the past few years. Up until last year, we were a one-income family. Now, last year I started blogging, and we are making a second, I would say more of a part-time income, not a full-time income yet at this point, but we are bringing in extra money. But up until last year, we literally were doing it on one income, my husband's income, and that took a lot of sacrifice. There have been times that people have said to me, oh, well, you know, it's nice that you have that luxury to stay home. And while I'm forever grateful that I have had the chance to stay home with my children, it has not come without sacrifice. We have been a low-income family up until recently, and so it wasn't just that, oh, my husband was making all this money and it was just so easy for me to stay home. That wasn't the case for us, and so we had to make some really hard choices. Now, I truly believe that a lot of people who want to stay home but feel like they can't actually can by making some changes. Now, I say a lot because the truth of the matter is I know that it can't work for everyone. And I'm going to say that because cost of living varies from place to place. Now, we live in a place that I would say is has expensive living costs, but I've seen much worse. And in some of the areas that the living costs are extremely high, I'm not even sure how they do it on two incomes, let alone one. So I understand that, so I don't want to say that anyone, you know, should be able to stay home, because I do realize that you got to pay the bills. It just comes down to what you can decrease on the bills so that you can maybe stay home, or if you can't stay home full-time, maybe you can stay home part-time, or maybe you can start working from home. So there are options. It's not an all-or-nothing kind of thing. But I just want to give you some tips of how we've managed to make it work in our home and in our life, and maybe you can apply those to your life and work towards staying home. Or, you know, sometimes you end up on one income because of an illness or job loss, or maybe you're a single parent and you're on one income, so there's other reasons too. So the first one is we have driven one vehicle for the majority of our marriage. I think there was like 6 months in there that we didn't, when one of our vehicles was on its way out, so we had to replace it, and we drove that one into the ground for the last 6 months. But we've always lived on one vehicle. Now, that is easier to do when you're at home because you don't have to work, you don't have to drive to a job, but it still is difficult. It hasn't always been easy. We've made it work, but it has come with a bit of a struggle. We live 40 minutes from my husband's job. We used to live 30 minutes before, but we've always lived a distance from my husband's job. And so when the kids would have an appointment or an extracurricular that overlapped with work hours, I would get up, get the kids up, we would drive my husband to work, and then we would come home, and then we'd drive to whatever appointment or extracurricular we had, and then we would drive home maybe, and then we would drive and go get my husband from work. Which is a lot of driving, but it's still cheaper than if we were to get a second vehicle, pay the insurance and pay the gas, and be driving every day. So once a week or once every few weeks, it wasn't so bad. And there's been a lot of times my husband and I have learned to wait for one another when we've had a commitment and we've all been together and we can't leave. And we've just made it work. And it's actually, you know, brought us a little closer as a family because we're not going separate directions all the time. We're always in the same vehicle. Now, we are talking about getting a second vehicle in the future, nice beater vehicle, because we are at that point, but we have managed to make it. You know, we're going on 16 years of marriage here, and we've made it pretty much one vehicle our whole marriage. So it is possible. So that's a huge help to going to one income. The second I would say is to shop secondhand. We get everything from secondhand. This dresser here, secondhand. This picture here, secondhand. All from, you know, thrift store or online, from yard sale sites or from actual yard sales, or I put the word out on Facebook if I'm looking for something and I'll ask if someone's selling something. Most of our furniture, most of our clothes, most of our dishes, the majority of stuff in our house is secondhand, and I have actually grown to really like shopping secondhand because I find you find more unique things than if you're just to go to a regular store now. So it's actually become my preference anyways. I actually love a good thrift store find. But it can save you a lot of money, especially in the clothes department for children. Because clothing our children can really add up. And you know what? They wear it not that long because they grow, and it's just cheaper to go that way. The third thing is to pay off debt and don't rack up more. Many times, part of our budget is paying off debt, and we've got large bills from credit cards or lines of credits or whatever, and that's eating into your budget. So if you can get that paid off, you're going to have that room for necessities like groceries, gas, whatever. And of course, the idea is not to rack up more, to help you be able to live within your means and stay home. So on top of that, you want to build up an emergency fund. Now, building up an emergency fund can be really tricky for people on a low income. I think it's Dave Ramsey who says to build up $1,000, but for some, $1,000 is not achievable, and that's fine. If you can get 500 there, just try to get something in your emergency fund, and you can start by every paycheck you put $20 in, and eventually it'll add up and it'll snowball into a kind of a nice little fund for you, so that if something was to happen and you're on one income, you don't have to panic because you know that you have even some money to help you towards whatever emergency that is, whether your car breaks down or you have a house emergency or an illness. Having some kind of emergency fund can really help with that. If you can go for the 1,000 or above, definitely do that. But if that seems like way too much, don't let that prevent you from doing an emergency fund. Put whatever you can in there, whatever you can, and it will help. Then you want to cut out extras. So extras can be like cable, satellite, data on your cell phone. Both my husband and I have cell phones because we don't have a landline anymore, but we don't have data on our phone. I know that's the really unpopular thing to do these days, but there's so many places you go and you get Wi-Fi that it's not even, we don't miss it. It's different if you need data for your job, but if you don't, you really can do without it. We don't have cable or satellite. We have always had Netflix. I think in the US you also have, is it Hulu? And so there's cheaper options that way. So there's alternatives you can do, but you just need to cut out those extras to save on your bill. Choose cheaper extracurriculars. So staying at home, spending time with your children, you may find, when I've been at home, I found, I want to get them involved in stuff. Part of me being around here is so I can bring them to their extracurriculars, but the other side of the coin is affording those extracurriculars. So we've always chosen cheaper ones. The kids are involved in a club at our church, and they've played soccer. When we've done more expensive extracurriculars like horseback riding, we've done it every 2 weeks as opposed to every week. Our local YMCA has given us subsidy before for things like swimming lessons. So there are cheaper options. You can still have your children involved in activities, but you can look for ones that maybe don't break the budget as bad. You don't have to not have them involved at all. You just have to look at more affordable options. You also want to consider saving money in the kitchen. I talk about this. I'm like a broken record. I talk about this in every video. If you watch my other videos, you're like, yes, Amanda, I know, you always say this. But it's true. The kitchen is such a great place to save money because it's a flexible area where you can save on your bill. And you can eat cheaper foods, you can make more from scratch, you can buy in bulk. There's so many options. In our house, steak is not a common meal. We eat steak a few times a year. If we do eat steak more regularly, it's in a stew or in a stir fry, and it's not the main event. We make a lot from scratch. We use a lot of rice and potatoes to stretch a meal, and so and apples are common fruit here because they're cheap. So there are ways you can save money in the kitchen, and that's one area that can really help you on your budget. And the last one I'm going to say is going to be not for everyone, but if you want to stay home long term and you're living in a bigger home or with a bigger vehicle, then you may consider downsizing. Lots of people do it, and lots of people, in the end, they love it. Less house to clean, less electricity bills to pay, less heating bills, and less maintenance. With the vehicles, the same way. One of the things my husband and I have been holding out for is a truck for our second vehicle, but we discovered that if we get a beater car, that we like to call it, that we could probably do it sooner than later. And so we have decided we're going to settle and get the cheaper car, because the truck is just too expensive for us right now. And so consider, if you already have the truck, maybe you can sell it and get something smaller if that works for your life. Or if you have a bigger house and you really, really want to stay home, consider downsizing or moving. If you have an option to move to an area that's cheaper. That's not possible for everyone or a lot of people, but it is possible for some, especially if it's in the same kind of area. Some different areas of the city can be cheaper than others. So if that's something you want to consider, that can be a good option. And that's basically it. Those are ones we have done to allow me to stay home. It has been really awesome for me to be able to be at home. It hasn't always been easy. We've had a lot of financial struggles, but it's gotten easier over the years. We've learned to manage better, and we've learned to stretch our dollar, and that's really helped. And I really don't regret any of the years that I've stayed home, even though sometimes it has been financially difficult. It's all been worth it. And each year gets better as, like I said, we learn to manage better, and we make a little more money. So, and the kids get older, and that helps too, because they have just different needs and different understandings of how it all works together. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching this video, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them below, and I'll answer them best I can. Thanks.